with how to have a mentoring conversation. So my name is Susan, and I work with SHPE in our Research and Impact Office with the mentorship program specifically. And I'm here with David, who's one of our participants in the program. And we're just going to have a conversation about his thoughts on how to have a mentoring conversation. So David, I'm curious, as a mentor, how do you feel that mentees can help make a conversation impactful and productive?
Yeah. So hey everyone, I'm David. I started doing the mentorship program, I think about like a year and a half ago. So I'm on my fifth mentee actually. So have awesome relationships with all my mentees. I love every 4 or 5 months when that mentorship officially kind of expires in the platform, I'll get like another request and always like kind of happily accept it. And I would say with respect to your question, at the beginning of when I first started doing mentorship, I would kind of be the one who takes on the role of scheduling the conversations as the mentor. And I'd be like, okay, I'm going to make sure that we have check-ins like every month. If we need to pull it up, make them more frequent to do bi-weekly, or make them, less frequent, then I would just kind of like let the mentee guide me in that sense. But as I've kind of gotten a little bit older and have done a couple rounds of this now, I've kind of given the ball to the mentee actually, and say, as much as you need me, I'm here, and I'll just let you schedule the meetings from now on. I think because it allows them to kind of come prepared, to really come to a conversation needing something, and just kind of lets them go at their own pace. So there's kind of pros and cons to each. I think when I'm the one that's like setting the meeting schedule as the mentor, making sure that like we're hitting their goals and kind of keeping them on track, there's like that benefit. But then I think more realistically, what's going to happen in the real world, like outside of SHPE, is if you have mentors, you're going to always have to be the one that is, engaging them, setting up meeting times, and even in some cases, keeping the agenda on track yourself as the mentee. So that's kind of my experience now, and that's where I'm at this point.
That's great. I think it's a push and pull, right? There's the getting started, getting a mentee comfortable with the relationship. But yeah, setting up that expectation that like, I'm here for you, but I need you to help lead this too.
Yeah.
When you think back to some of those like really productive meetings, when you think back to when your mentees did it really well and it worked really well, how do you think that they were planning for those meetings and coming prepared with things to talk about? Like, what did that look like on their end, do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think just naturally, when people sign up for the mentorship program, they already have things in mind that they want help on. It might be like 1 or 2 things, might be as simple as getting an internship, getting a full-time role. So I think what's really helpful is just coming with something that they need help on. Because a lot of times when you start a mentor relationship, professionally or at your job, a lot of people kind of just do it just to meet the person, which is always great because it's always great to expand your network. But I think with SHPE specifically, because, we are one familia, we want to help each other in all aspects, kind of the mentor's job is to then kind of take that one thing that they need help on and try to look at like the rest of their professional or personal life and say, hey, we can work on this. Let's work on making some goals. So I think just having a willing mentee come to the table and say, I need help in these things. And then the mentor being like, okay, let's make a plan, and like some actual tangible goals to like make that a reality. And then also like try to check off a couple other boxes.
Awesome. Do you have any advice for mentors who maybe have a mentee who's just a little hesitant or maybe shy or, kind of introverted through this initial process? Have you had any experience with mentees who you really had to coach more to kind of have a mentoring conversation and in those meetings? What are some tips and tricks that you've done to try to pull that out when you need to?
Yeah, I've had mentees. I think the 5 that I've had, like a whole wide range of, which has been awesome, like a very wide range of personalities. Some of them are more older, some of them are seniors, like they're like very outgoing. Some of them are like, one of them was a freshman who was didn't really have any internship experience yet. was, a little bit more timid. And I think that's just like part of the fun, where like as a mentor who's been in SHPE for a while, you can kind of bring them out of their shell and help them see things from an older perspective on like expanding your network, networking to get those professional opportunities, professional goals and stuff and whatnot. So my tips as a mentor are really just to try to get to know your mentee as much as possible. Because I think at the end of the day, being in the SHPE mentorship program is, again, going back to Familia, we're all about trying to get to know you, and we really care and love everybody in the community. So I think the number one thing you can really do is just kind of level with them, be down to earth, and try to get to know them as a person before you first, try to help them professionally.
Great point. Yeah, the relationship building takes time, right? And it takes some awkwardness. We've described it, as that kind of first time you meet in the coffee shop, there's all of that kind of awkward, silence moments, and just kind of lean into that. So I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there about that a little bit. Well, how about if we shift to kind of talking about, how to have a temperature check conversation to evaluate the connection. I'm just kind of curious, is that something that you've had to do before, and have you had to really prepare for the conversation as a mentor? Did you just let that happen naturally?
Yeah, I'd say with temperature checks, it really kind of goes back to the foundation that you laid at the beginning of the relationship. So like for me, during our first couple of meetings, I'm always very adamant about like goal building. And like by the end of the, 4 or 5 months that we're doing this, what do you guys want to be able to say that you accomplished? Or like, what is something tangible that you want to say that you did or got from this? So my temperature checks as the mentor is really just kind of keeping good notes. So I think as a mentor, it's really helpful to have one note, have like Google Keep, have like something where you're logging some major takeaways from each conversation. And then 2, like any action items that either you or them are going to take. So like if you say that you're gonna, oh yeah, like I have a friend at Lockheed, or I have a friend at Accenture, ExxonMobil, let me connect you with them so you can, try to learn about some, summer opportunities that they have. So it's your job as a mentor, now that you've established that you can do that and you can help them, is to follow up on and actually do that. It can be really easy to like forget about it or say, yeah, I'll get to that like tomorrow. But if you can just like right after your mentor conversation on the platform, I just try to like really knock out any promises that I say I'm going to keep, just so they can feel like they're actually getting something and feel that I actually care about making sure that they get what they need from the relationship. And then on the mentee side, it's similar. Like if there's things that we talk about that you can do, or you'll come prepared with, like if it's whether it's a revised resume, or a list of interview questions that they want to prep on, or a list of companies that they should think about, that they want to apply for in the coming recruiting season, then those are all things that you should do your best to try to come with to have the most productive next conversation.
Yeah. Have you ever, as a mentor, had to have a conversation with a mentee that, maybe just to kind of check and say, hey, it doesn't seem like we're really progressing towards your goals. What do you think the barriers are? How can I help? What's going on kind of behind the scenes, and kind of had to have that kind of conversation. Do you have any examples or recommendations for other mentors that might need to have that kind of a conversation with a mentee?
Yeah, there's definitely been a couple like check-ins on like a monthly basis where, maybe they aren't hitting their goals, whereas they're not hearing back from recruiters, or, they actually haven't, sent out the applications that they wanted, or they haven't like gotten their resume or stuff revised. So I think then it's just kind of like being like, well, making sure that you establishing the importance, and also like the why of why you're doing all these things. And if things aren't working, just kind of like letting it be known that like there are things that are outside of your control all the time, whether you're a student, whether you're a grad student, undergrad, or professional. There's going to be times where people don't respond, or you're just not going to get, things that you want, unfortunately. And it's just all about letting them know that everybody goes through that kind of thing. Just because that it's a no now, maybe in a job situation or an internship situation where they don't get the answer that they want, knowing that like that does not mean that later down the line that that's something they can get if they really want it. There's my opinion, I'm a very optimistic mentor, I'd say, and I'd say like there's always a way to work towards that and show people that you really want it or that you deserve it if you put in the work and you make the right relationships. So there definitely have been those conversations, but it's all about trying to approach it in an optimistic sense and trying to look at the silver linings and trying to like take lessons out of, you know, things that may be a hardship in the moment.
That's great advice, and I think very timely. Today, I know I've seen in the last 4 or 5 years more emphasis on helping each other kind of cope with the no's in life, right? And what does that really mean? And so I think that that's some really great, powerful pieces that a mentor can bring to a mentee, and just helping them process those situations. That's great. I think another thing that's happened in just the space of professional life and some of the things that mentors do is talking about well-being, right? Like we're all trying to be taking care of ourselves better. And so I'm just curious, for you, we know that mentoring has lots of benefits, and we really think of mentors just helping you, like you said, like get an internship, do something with professional development. But what have you experienced in your connections that has really helped strengthen your well-being, and how have these connections helped fill your cup as a mentor?
Yeah, I'd say with being a mentor in the mentorship program, I'd say one, it's just an opportunity to really give back to an organization that has given me so much. I mean, SHPE has really changed my life in so many ways. So it's just really cool to be able to kind of be on the other side of the students' perspective and being able to give advice that I wish I had when I was their age, or also advice that I had been given from SHPE and you know, through national convention or the regional conferences or just different chapter events, and just being able to push it forward and help give it to as many people as possible. So that really fills my cup in a lot of different ways. I would say that on top of that, I would say in terms of well-being, when I approach these different mentor relationships, I definitely try to inject different areas where I can be a mentor as opposed to just professional development. So especially when it comes to like things that they may not have even thought about. So for example, I am really passionate about financial literacy, especially in the Hispanic community. So I always try to just, you know, bring that kind of perspective to it, being someone who's come from a lower income background, someone who's had their house foreclosed on and gone through financial struggles growing up, being like, hey, if you guys maybe have not been exposed to what a Roth IRA is, or how to budget, or different apps that I use to help manage my finances now that I am a professional. And I've been pleasantly surprised to how much help I've kind of had on that perspective as well, and on that side of mentorship. And outside of that, mental health is a huge thing as well that I'm very passionate about. So making sure that, especially when I mentor people that are in college still, that are undergrads, thinking about like, okay, you've definitely checked your internship box, you have technical experience, you have a great GPA, but like, let's look at the extracurriculars. Like, let's look at your leadership, let's look at your involvement, and, you know, the fun stuff that's college is all about. Because I think a lot of times we get so wrapped in like, let's make sure we have a 4.0, like I have to have a 4.0, or like I'm not succeeding, or I'm not going to do well. And we especially feel that as Hispanics in STEM, because we always feel like we have to be working harder than everybody else. And I feel like just making my mentees realize that college, one of the most valuable things about college is the relationships that you make, the friends that you make in SHPE, outside of SHPE, and other student groups. And those are going to be your lifelong friends. So making sure that you're investing your time in those relationships is going to pay almost way more dividends than anything else you can spend your time on. So that's a whole nother mental health, making sure you're having fun, making sure that you're learning about personal finance and financial literacy, all things that I try to offer and give back to my mentees, and fill their cup as well.
That's so powerful. And I think it really reflects back to what we were talking about earlier about how to have a mentoring connection, and, you know, how to make the meetings go right. Like you have to connect personally first. Do you feel like, you know, in those moments where you've been able to be vulnerable and share some of these things about your well-being and how you've kind of processed that it has helped develop that personal connection so you can have better meetings?
Definitely. I think I'm an open book. So I always share if there's any questions about things I've gone through or advice that I have, I always try to pull from personal experience, and just try to be as open and vulnerable as I can. Because like you said, that's how you really form the best relationships. Um, I'd say when it comes from questions from my mentees, I always just try to point them in the right direction. So for example, if I had a mentee who was trying to get plugged into more things on campus, and like they felt just like I was describing earlier, that like they were doing their best in academics, they had a technical experience, but like they were kind of missing that like social leadership aspect of things. So I was thinking just kind of doing something as simple as going through like what their interests are, like what really gets them going, what piques their interest, and trying to find clubs and groups on campus that might align perfectly with that and give them something that they love to do that's fun, and then also might give them a whole nother community of people that they wouldn't have been able to connect with otherwise. So yeah, I think that it's really helped kind of, it's like the X factor of these mentorship connections for sure.
Yeah. That really kind of leads me to just want to ask you some questions about, sounds like you've been able to really get those personal connections with your mentees. And a lot of that probably comes in how you connect in between meetings as well. So how have you approached that process of, as a mentor, reaching out and connecting with them in between meetings, so you're building that personal connection? What has that looked like for you?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I always try to make myself super accessible to all my mentees. So giving them my phone number, connecting with them on LinkedIn, giving them my phone number. I always say, if you have any questions, I mean, I really like the SHPE mentorship portal, but if they don't want to kind of like log on to that, send a message to the portal. And if it's easier, just shoot me a message on LinkedIn or to my phone. And just if there's any questions that come up in the weeks or months before we chat, I always try to help that way. And I've gotten a lot of questions that way, and temperature checks per se, through those mediums, which I think just build the relationship even stronger. I will like send stuff I see, like if I'm scrolling LinkedIn and I see an opportunity or an event that may be good for them, especially like all the events that SHPE puts on, I try to DM it to them just to be as helpful as possible in those other mediums. Also, I remember probably like one of the most proud moments I had as a mentee was when I actually got a call from one of my mentees, like during the fall recruiting season. And this mentee had been offered an interview, like they traveled him out to this location to interview like on site. And he gave me a call like at the end of that interview. And it was not the call that I was expecting. It was like, you're not going to believe it. Like I completely messed up that interview. I ended up being like a little bit late to the interview because my clock was set, because the hours from my time zone didn't match up. And and the people that were in the interview ended up being like really put off by that. I ended up like getting told to like basically leave the full day interview like halfway through the day, and was pretty shook by it, very understandably. And I felt very glad that he was able to reach out to me and just have someone to talk through and just honestly vent and just be like, it's totally okay. Like things like that happen to people all the time, even though you flew out and you made like had to put a lot more time that was invested into the situation. At least you can kind of take comfort in the fact that this happens to a lot of different people. If the company wasn't as understanding, and just kind of like making more logical I guess counter arguments to make sure that they're just not like going through a black hole of bad thoughts. Just saying like, if the company doesn't kind of understand that, like you're going to find a company that's going to better align with your values, and is going to really appreciate and see through minor inconveniences during the day of the interview. So I felt really glad that I was able to be there for my mentee that day. And I try to open up those other modes of communication in case anything like that comes up ever.
Yeah, I think that's so critical. And I think that just that example again goes back to prove that if you can take the time to get that personal connection with your mentees, the depth of trust and the depth of conversations that you can have with them. But that is the messiest and the hardest part, right? To
Yeah.
open up as a mentor and take that time. I know myself too, sometimes you struggle with, okay, we've got a list of goals, let's go through the goals, but sometimes you have to say, let's set the goals aside and like, how are you? What's going on with you? And having those connections. So it sounds like you've had some really great interactions. I want to give you the opportunity too. I know we sent you a list of questions and things to kind of think about your experiences, but when you signed up to do this, were there other things that you just wanted to share, or other advice, or other thoughts about the mentorship program that you think would be helpful to mentors, mentees, both?
Yeah, I'd say one thing I definitely want to share is, and this, you can apply this same kind of logic in like SHPE chapters and SHPE professional chapters, where people might not realize that certain programs or opportunities are beneficial to them until someone like goes out of their way and tells them, hey, this would be a great thing for you. So to like anyone watching, if you know any people that would be a great mentor, or people that would really benefit from being a mentee in the program, like I would say the best way you can convince them is really just reaching out to them directly and saying like, hey, you'd be a great mentor in this program. Like it's only like a couple hours, like every month or so, depending on what's your frequency with the frequency of communication with your mentee, but it can really go a long way and give back to people who need it the most, which are the undergraduates and graduates of SHPE. So please reach out to people. This is a great program. It has benefited me from being a previous mentee ish in SHPE as an undergrad, and I'm proud to say that I've been able to give back and help a couple of my mentees as well. So the best way you can spread the good news is really reaching out to people individually.